Stephanie Denman here from the Denman Homestead, and I am going to be making some stuff today on my pottery wheel. And Buddy has lovingly reminded me that I need to share how I make things on the pottery wheel. So I'm going to be sharing with you how I do that. To be fair, I did record not that long ago how I made a honey pot, but when we went to edit it, it was all in slow-mo. So, gotta love content creation because sometimes it doesn't always go to plan. But today, because fall is right around the corner, and I'm fingers crossed hoping to get into maybe some little fall markets and stuff, I want to make more little ceramic pumpkins for either a mantle or a centerpiece or just fall decorations. So I figure if I'm going to make a pumpkin, I'll show you how I do it. And remember, I'm a baby potter. I'm very, very new at this, so I'm not an expert by any means. I just really enjoy doing it, and if I can do it, and I'm only a couple months in, I'm going to show you how you can do it too. Okay, so here's my little wheel, and I've got like my little station here set up. Got my little tools and my little water bucket. Everything is within like reach so that I don't have to get up and move around. I also wear an apron because I like to wipe my hands. All right, so I put a little bit of water down on my wheel here. I don't know if you noticed or not, but I just squeezed a little bit of water down. You don't want it super, super wet, but you do want it damp. I find that it helps the clay get a good suction on there. I just kind of throw it down as close to the center as I possibly can. Give it a couple little taps. Make sure it's all got a good connection with the wheel, because if it doesn't, it'll fly off. And then I just take my finger, see, it's already moving. I just take my finger and I run it around the rim of the bat. And the bat is this thing here. And I find that when I smush some of the clay down on that bat, it helps it to not move around so much until I can center the clay. All right, so I'm just gonna get my sponge and I'm gonna make sure my clay is nice and wet. And then I'm just gonna apply some pressure because I don't want a wobbly ball of clay. I want it centered. Because if you don't have a centered clay, your clay isn't centered, your whole piece is gonna be thrown off. You're gonna have a really hard time getting your piece to cooperate. Sometimes you can center it at the very first go around. Sometimes you need a couple, what it's called, cones, like coning up your clay to center it. So you just, in order to cone your clay, you do this. You squeeze it with both hands and it makes a cone, like a little volcano. I've never taken a ceramics class before. All I've done is watch some videos online. And then with this part of your hand, your palm, you press down to make a disc. And this compression really helps get air bubbles out of your clay. And then when you go down, when you start to compress the clay, you can feel it when it starts to center. It doesn't have a wobble on it anymore. So this is pretty centered. I like to think of my wheel as a clock. So I'm facing it, right? So it's going to be different for you. But in order to get my clay centered, so the top is 12 for me, and then there's 1 and 2 and 3. So when I'm coning and I'm centering, I press with my left hand into the 2 o'clock. And that helps me center my clay. I give it a little gentle press and it helps me to center that as I'm pressing down at the same time. Okay, so I have my disc here, my little puck, my little hockey puck. And just along the way, I kind of clean up the bat. And what I want to do is I want to make a pumpkin. So in order to do that, I'm almost going to make a bowl. Like I'm going to make what I assume is going to be like a bowl, but then I'm going to bring it in the top and I'm going to make it a dome. Okay. In the past, so you can do this a couple ways. You can leave clay at the bottom, or you can go all the way down to the bottom of the bat and leave a hole at the bottom. Either way is fine. The last time that I left clay at the bottom, I think it trapped too much moisture in my pumpkin and it cracked in the kiln. So what I'm doing right now is I'm putting my fingers inside this center and I'm bracing with my left hand and I'm pulling towards me and I'm opening up the center. I am leaving a little bit of clay towards the bottom. I'm not going all the way down to the bat, but I'm making a little bowl. Hopefully you can see that. It's hard to get everything in a shot in that angle. And now what I'm doing is I'm taking my fingers and I'm compressing the bottom and I'm moving them out towards the edges. There's a couple rules of thought about compression. Some potters think that it helps to eliminate cracks on the bottom of your pieces to compress the bottom. So I like to just safekeeping do a couple compressions and move some of that clay out. Okay? So now I have a little dish. It looks like a little bowl. What I want to do is I want to bring these sides up and then I'm going to bring them in. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my clay and my hands are nice and wet. Otherwise it's going to grab and pull and it's not going to be a clean pull up. So I'm just going to pull up these walls a little bit at a time. I'm not great at pulling up walls. It takes me a lot longer to pull up walls than some of the pros. From everything I've seen, it's like, oh, well, you need to be able to do pull up your walls in 3 pulls, and I'm not there yet, guys. So I just take my time with pulling up my walls. So I've got kind of a cylinder here going on. And now what I want to do is I want to start to kind of, before the walls get too thin, I want to start to move my clay inwards. I'm going to take both of my hands. We're going to move in. As I'm doing that, I use my sponge a lot. I use my sponge as almost like an extra appendage. Sometimes I move it out of the way. Sometimes I get it in there to like help soak up stuff. Before my hole gets too small, I'm gonna soak up any extra pooled water that's down inside because I don't want my clay to hold moisture. I want it to be able to dry evenly, because if it's not going to dry evenly, that's where you get cracking. Okay, so now that I have kind of a dome top, I'm going to stick some fingers inside while bracing the outside and just give it a little bit of a push. And that's going to help start to create that kind of that pumpkin shape. So I'm just giving it a slight little guide from the inside, all the while my outside hand is kind of gently moving some of that clay on top, right? We're starting to get that kind of pumpkin look. What I can do now is I can take my finger at the bottom and I can start to kind of take some of that excess clay off to give it more of a globe shape. Okay? So now we're working with that. And I'm going to try my best not to get a whole lot of water inside at this point, because it's going to be more difficult to get it out as the hole at the top closes in. So I'm not really worried about what it looks like on the inside. I'm not worried about making sure it looks real polished and smooth. No one's gonna see it. No one's gonna see the inside of it. So what I'm doing now is I'm just gently using my hands to close that top hole. You see this hole's getting smaller? And I don't want my pumpkin to be a baseball. There's not a whole lot of pumpkins that are perfectly round, right? So I kind of want it a little squatty. So as you are pulling in your walls on the top, you can put slight pressure, kind of like we did downwards whenever we were making that hockey puck. Just slight pressure inwards and down just a touch. And it's gonna help close the hole, but also give you more of like the typical pumpkin shape, right? Now, if your pumpkin or if your piece gets too flat, then what you're gonna need to do is you're gonna need to take the sides and just give it a little bit of a squeeze, and you can round it back out a little bit. Okay. So I just have a tiny little hole at the top. You can leave it just like this if you want, because what we're gonna do next is we're gonna build the stem for the top. So if you wanna leave this open, it's not imperative that you close it all the way up. You just need to make sure that your stem covers this hole. You don't want your stem falling through your hole, right? So just make sure whatever opening you have here will be covered by your little stem that comes up. I'm going to close this just a little bit more. I'm not going to worry about closing it completely. Okay. So there we have it. There's the beginning of our pumpkin. And I'll bring you closer so you can see what I'm working with here. So now I'm going to take this tool and I'm going to scrape the bottom where my pumpkin is and clean up some of that extra clay that's around the base. And I just kind of throw that in my bucket here. Once this completely, well, not completely, but once it gets to a leather hard stage, which is basically letting it dry for a few hours, maybe it depends on your climate, but letting this dry for a bit, sometimes even the next day, come back and then we can clean up the base of it to make it more pumpkin-like. So you can't just take this off and start cleaning it up. It'll mush, right? It needs to set up a little bit. We can, however, add the stem on now. And I'll tell you why that's important. Just clean this up just a little bit more. The more you can clean up and shape on the wheel now, it's less trimming work for you later. Okay. All right. Now what I'm going to do is my hands up a little bit. I'm gonna get my wire tool. Looks like this. I have a couple of them in there. And I'm just gonna wrap it around a little bit and brace it with my thumbs flat on the bat. And I'm gonna let it spin just ever so slightly. It's gonna help get underneath all the way. And I slide it just like that. There's a little bit of clay that sticks to the wire because it's separating the base of the pumpkin from the bat. So later on, when I take it off to clean it up, it's already got a natural separation. And it's not going to be so difficult to pop this off. It's not going to be suctioned down to the bat like it was whenever we first started. All right. So let's take this off of the wheel and make the stem. Okay, so we're over here at the counter. This is what my little pumpkin looks like right now. Okay. The hope is eventually it'll look something like these two. And I've got my clay hands all over them. See, this one has an open bottom, this one doesn't. So you can make them either way. This one I just pressed all the way down to the bat and then opened up. This one I left a little clay towards the bottom of the bat and opened up like I did with this one. So I pinched off some clay, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to just sculpt this part of it. This is not going to be done on the wheel, but I'm just going to get basically a little stem size, and I'm going to just kind of play with this until I find a shape that I kind of think is coming into what the top of a pumpkin looks like. Okay, that looks good to me. Now I'm going to take this top and I'm just going to kind of twirl this around in my hands. You can do this separately if you want to take like a piece of clay. If you want to get your little top going and then just take a piece of clay and make a little snake like you did back in school and, you know, curly cue it and then stick it on top of your little stump. But you can also do it all in one piece. And I find that trying to do it all in one piece has less chance of kind of cracking and separation, okay? So something like this, like a little hat, but then you can kind of play around with it and twirl it, twist it around kind of like you would find like on a natural vine, like that. But I'm not gonna just stick this on here and call it a day, okay? I'm gonna do something called score and slip. All right, I have a few tools here. I've got this little canister and I've made my own slip. Slip is basically watered down clay that makes it, it's almost like a glue. It's that's what it is. It's watered down clay, and it creates a glue between two pieces. I also have this tool. This was part of Irene's tools that I started to use. It's a scoring tool. So what you do is you take your whatever piece you want to attach to a different piece and you make score marks. Now think of this like laying tile, right? So when you lay tile with the mortar and everything, you take your mortar and you get your tool, right? Your tile tool, and you create these grooves, and then you put down your, you know, tile right on top of it, and it suctions to those lines. And it's very similar. So it gives a stronger bond than just sticking your piece right on top of a smoothed out top. I'm also going to score this side as well. Okay. And then what we do is we just press it down and mold it to how we want it. Don't forget, clay is pretty forgiving. So if you gouge it or something, you can come back right now with another piece of clay and patch it if you need to, for the most part anyway, unless you just poke a big hole, you know, like if you drop it and smash it, that's another thing, which I've definitely done that. But right now I'm just kind of smoothing it out, making sure there's contact on all ends, all sides, messing around with this top, see how I kind of like how I want the little vine to lay over. And then I'm going to let this dry for a bit. Once it starts to harden up, I'm going to come back by with another tool and create my pumpkin ridges. Right now I feel like it's a little bit too wet to do that, but I'm going to wait for it to be a little bit leather hard, and I'm going to come back and just make those indents where a classic pumpkin has those those ridges, right? Making it look a little bit more pumpkin-esque. So right now, we're gonna let this kind of harden up a bit. Okay, so it's been a few hours and I'm back to my pumpkin. Had a little bit of an emergency today. We had to take Luna to the vet because she got bit by a snake. So while I was there, this was air drying and she's okay. She's got medication now. It's gonna be fine. I have some tools. These are Irene's tools that I bought, and I am going to use some of these just to create the creases of my pumpkin. Now, you can really be creative freedom with this part, okay? I'm probably gonna get like a towel or a rag of some sort, because normally when I make these little indents, some of that extra clay comes off of the edge of the pumpkin, and I just wipe that off so I don't continue to collect a bunch of clay on my tool. All right, so I'm just gonna take, it's just a rubber tip tool, any one you wanna use. And I'm just gonna basically take it and go straight up with it. And create a little crease. That wasn't very straight because I was doing it backwards, so I'm gonna fix this. It's easier when I can actually see what I'm doing. But the good news about clay is just mush it around. This is still kind of wet, more wet than I would normally. I would probably wait till maybe even the next day to. It's okay, I guess. But I'm gonna just smooth that hard line out with my finger, so it's almost like not a super rough, deep line, but and then I can come back again tomorrow and even get a wet sponge and continue to smooth this out as needed. But basically, we're just gonna create a little groove in the edge of the pumpkin. Now, I'm not gonna go all the way up on every single line. Some of them I'm gonna stop halfway up. Some of them I'm just gonna do barely, because if you think of how a pumpkin normally is, not every single line starts from the top all the way to the bottom. Sometimes there's just from top to middle, or from bottom to middle, how a pumpkin kind of grows. And if you find that you want a different tool, experiment with different tools, but I'm good with this one. And I'm just going to go through and make different sized lines all around the pumpkin. Okay. Now I've made my initial lines, and I'm just going to go back with my finger and smooth some of these out. I feel like once the glaze really kind of settles into some of these like indents and crevices, it really brings the pumpkin to life. So I'm able to just kind of pop this pumpkin off the base. That way I can make sure my lines run all the way from top to bottom. And then tomorrow I can clean it up better with the sponge, buff out any fingerprints, any rough gouges. I don't know how much you're going to be able to see, but it's kind of starting to take shape. It's starting to kind of get those pumpkin ridges in it, right? We'll just keep on messing with it until we are happy with it. And then once this is fully dried, which normally takes like 3 or 4 days at least, the bigger the piece, the thicker the piece, the longer it's going to take to dry. Then then we can put it in the kiln, and can't fire it with it being super wet or else it'll explode. And then after we do that, then we can glaze it once it's already been fired in the kiln one time. That's called the bisque firing. Gotta get it to bisque, and then we can glaze it. 2 firings. Sometimes I've tried skipping the bisque and just glazing straight onto this, what's called greenware. And I don't know, I just really wasn't a fan of how some of the pieces turned out. So I have better luck bisque firing first and then glazing instead of trying to do 2 in 1. Some people have good luck with it, but I'm not there yet. I guess I'm just not that experienced. But anyway, I'm just kind of going around, slightly taking off some of that clay in the grooves to give it more of that pumpkin shape. That's really it. That's how to throw a pumpkin on the wheel and add a little vine at the top. But I'll hopefully update you guys on this one in a few days when it's glazed. But thanks for joining me today with this one, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye, guys.
On the Denman homestead, where the sun sets golden in the west, we live in harmony with nature, doing what we love best. From the garden to the kitchen, and the bees inside their hive. On the Denman homestead, come along and plant, nourish, thrive.